Okay, let's go ahead and start again. So let's just spend a minute regenerating a positive motivation for this afternoon session. Yeah, so again, generate a bodhicitta motivation or whatever positive motivation you wish. Okay, so let's continue with the foundation of all good qualities. I need to share it. We'll go up to, so far we've almost finished the small scope and foundation of all good qualities. We covered the two preliminaries of guru devotion and reflecting on the precious human rebirth. And then the idea is that, once one realizes the great value of this human rebirth, then the question is how to take its essence. And then there's the four topics of the individual of small capability or the small scope. Then, reflecting on impermanence and death to compel us to start taking its essence immediately. And then considering the possibility of rebirth in the lower realms and the suffering of the lower realms, what that would be like to take rebirth there, to compel us to generate a determination not to end up there, not to take rebirth in the three lower realms. And then, which isn't expressed in the prayer. Then actually the topic of refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, that's not expressed in the foundation of all good qualities, right? And also, I think the three principles of the aspects of the path, it's not really there. We'll see just a minute. And then karma. Yeah, foundation of all good qualities goes straight from reflection on impermanence and death to karma. Also, the suffering of lower realms is not mentioned there. Right? It goes to karma. So now so karma is the last topic of the small scope. So now we'll look at karma for a little bit, and then we'll keep going with the foundation of all good qualities. And there's some verses related to the middle scope, generating renunciation for samsara. Then once we finish that, we'll go to the three principal aspects of the path and look at the section that covers renunciation. Okay, so foundation of all good qualities says finding firm and definite conviction in this. Oh yeah, so we back up because this refers to the verse before, right? So remember the verse before, which we already talked about, was this life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. So then it goes straight into karma, right? After that, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Let's see if it mentions the lower realms or refuge below. It might. Finding firm and definite conviction. So after that, that's what I explained just before lunch, right? After that, death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. So finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negative action, and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Right? So recognizing that, death is imminent, and when death comes, then what happens to me after death depends upon my own karma, white and black karma. So generating strong conviction in that, then, so having generated conviction is finding firm and definite conviction in this truth of, death is imminent, and what happens after death is determined by my own white and black karma, my own virtuous and non-virtuous karma. Please bless me, therefore, to be careful, right? Careful to not create negative karma, to purify negative karmas we have created before, and to, as much as we can, invest our time and energy in virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind, through which we create positive karma, white karma. So please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negative action. So even the slightest, killing of a human being, if we don't purify it, then, it doubles in one day. And then after, so even killing a small insect, then the negative karma would create, and deliberately killing a small insect, then negative karma will create. If it's not purified, it doubles after one day. Each day it doubles exponentially. So after 4 days, it's equivalent to killing a human being, it is said, right? So we need to, that's why it's so important at the end of each day to engage in like practice, like reciting the Bodhisattva mantra or other practices to purify negative karma we created during the day. So finding firm and definite conviction is, please must always to be careful. So may I be careful to avoid even the slightest non-virtuous action. And then when I see that I have created some non-virtuous action, may I quickly purify it, be careful to purify it, thereby reduce the strength of it or eliminate it, so it doesn't ripen upon me. So please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negative action. So abandon even killing in our thoughts, even having thought to kill someone intentionally. It's like the first step towards speaking about that and then towards actually doing that, right? So in our body, our speech, and then even in our mind, we try to practice the ethical conduct of restraining from harming others, even in our thoughts. To abandon even the slightest negative action. And accomplish all virtuous deeds, right? And then engage in virtuous deeds motivated by loving kindness and compassion. And altruistic wish to benefit others, a selfless wish to benefit others. And then it's speaking about renunciation. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Right? So, seeking samsaric pleasures. So samsaric pleasures essentially is like the 8 worldly concerns. Especially on the 4 on the positive side. So there's, wishing for or wishing to have praise from others, wishing to have fame, wishing to have wealth, material wealth, and then, and possessions, and then wishing to have experiences that are pleasing to the 5 senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. So seeking samsaric pleasures, and, all the ordinary things we think of, having food and, entertainment and laughs and vacation. Not that any of those things are inherently bad, but recognizing that they can't fundamentally satisfy us. I was thinking today when I was driving, or I don't know, yesterday or today, when I was driving here, I was thinking about just Elon Musk. Remember there was these stories came out a couple of weeks ago that he was taking ketamine a lot, like during the, and you wonder, like the wealthiest person in the world has problems with depression such that he's taking like a drug for it, ketamine. It really shows. You would think, like I would think, if I had so much money that I could just buy whatever I wanted, I could go wherever I could do whatever I wanted to do, kind of essentially. You'd think you'd be happy in a way. We habitually think like that. I know I do. I thought, wow, if I had like, I don't know how many billions of dollars, it'd be so great, But actually the guys who do, not still face the same kind of problems we face. Even worse, even bigger headaches. Right? Depression and then ketamine. And then people find out, and then it's not like, if I was depressed and using ketamine, then maybe like some people, I don't know, around the centers find out and it's pretty bad, right? But like nothing compared to it being in the headlines in the New York Times and everybody in the world knows. It's like, can you imagine? It'd be like so heavy, on your mind, Then it's like, and everything you do is like that. Okay, that when your rocket can be caught by the mechanical arm, like everybody knows, and it's great. And then when people find out you're like whatever cheating on your wife, everybody knows, and it's so terrible. It's like your life is such a roller coaster if you're in the public eye. You can see why it really destroys a lot of people's lives, that being in the public eye. So, but samsaric pleasures are like that. The things we think, if I had $1 billion, it'd be so great. I could have whatever samsaric pleasure I want, but the people who have it still like always chasing after something else. Nothing, no fundamental like satisfaction there. So seeking samsaric pleasures is a door to all suffering. That's why chasing after these habitually chasing after money, fame, praise, power, influence, and then all the hedonistic pleasures. It's like you're just chasing forever, like a hamster on a running wheel, just chasing, chasing, chasing with no end, because they don't have the power to fundamentally satisfy us. Because they're in the nature of things that just give rise to more attachment in the mind, right? Give rise to craving. So samsaric pleasures, and they're in the nature of they're the suffering of change. The first bite is okay, and then gradually it's just not good. So you need more and better all the time. So a kind of rat race. So seeking that's why seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering, right? And in order to, when we're not satisfied, to get more, we turn to stealing, lying, even murder. So we engage in non-virtuous actions in order to satisfy this craving, like an addict. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain, and they cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to give up chasing after samsaric pleasures and rather generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Generate the wish to achieve, the lasting, stable happiness that comes about through wisdom and renunciation, basically. So please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation, the state, beyond being under the control of karma and afflictive emotions. Led by this pure thought, so this is renunciation. The wishing for the bliss of liberation is renunciation. Led by this pure thought of renunciation, then mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. Right? So we're mindful of the actions of our body, speech, and mind. Alertness meaning, let's say, sheshin. Yeah, sheshin. So this mindfulness means, and then the next word, alertness here, or introspection, another way to translate that word, is, and then ba'yo is like caution. So, but it's talking about generating mental stability. Like when we're meditating, doing placement meditation, then we use mindfulness to keep our attention fixed on the object of meditation, and just maintain an unbroken continuity of awareness of the object. And then we use introspection to like 25% of our mind, observing our own activity of meditation to monitor the quality of that. And when we see the mind's becoming too agitated, try to bring it down. When we see the mind's becoming too down and lethargic or lax, then we try to tighten up our attention. So we maintain a good quality of attention. And when our mind is distracted and we think about, our attention wanders off to some other object, it's the job of alertness or introspection to catch that and bring our attention back to the object. So led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and then great caution. Caution here means more like whatever vows we have, being cautious to keep those vows, or whatever other discipline if we've taken refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, to not engage in actions that contradict the refuge precepts, to uphold different commitments that we have. So to be, and in general, to be cautious with actions of our body and mind, and make sure that they align with our long-term aim of achieving liberation and enlightenment. So led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vow. So the root of the teachings here means, so what's the difference? There's the root of the teachings above was the spiritual teacher, correctly devoting to the spiritual teacher. Here the root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows, right? Can there be two roots? Yes. Yeah, trees have a lot of roots. There can be many roots of our practice here. Here above it says, correct devotion to him is the root of the path. And then below it says, what? The root of the teachings. Oh yeah, the root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. It means like, yeah, the root of, here it really means our practice of the teachings. In one way, we could interpret it different ways. Generally, when we say like the teachings, it means the teachings of the Buddha as they exist in the world, right? So there's the scriptural teaching, which means all the texts and the things the Buddha actually said as they're recorded in text. And then those are passed down as oral transmissions from one generation to the next. And then there's the realizational teaching, which means the realizations, and that's the primary one, the more important one, the realizations that beings develop in their mind, especially of emptiness, but also of the method side of the path. So the wisdom side of the path, the empty side of the path, the wisdom side of the path, and the method side of the path. All the realizations of the different aspects of Buddhist teachings that people develop as an experience, as a lived experience, is the realizational teachings. So, I mean, you could look at and say, well, he's talking about that, especially the realizational teachings, that the basis of generating realizations is practicing pure morality, right? That's the very first thing, is to refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, intoxicants, and lying, right? Those are the five root precepts when we first take refuge. The Buddha Dharma Sangha is like the entry into a serious Buddhist practice, is taking refuge, formally taking refuge. And then the 5 lay vows is what Buddha prescribed as the very basis for practice. Refraining from killing a human being, lying about your spiritual attainments, or lying in general, stealing, adultery, and intoxicants, using alcohol and other intoxicants. So, those are pratimoksha vows. There's 8 types of pratimoksha vows. Those of men, male and female lay practitioners. The 1-day vows. Those are the 3 for lay people, and then there's 5 for ordained people. Male and female novice monks, like novice monks and nuns, and then there's an intermediate nun, and then fully ordained monks and nuns. Those are the 5 ordained pratimoksha vows. So just like, when we practice the 3 higher trainings, the very first is practicing ethical discipline, because only by refraining from harming others brings a kind of peace and stability, contentment to our mind. And then based on that, we can engage in generating better meditative concentration, mental focus. Based on that, we can generate wisdom, deeply understanding emptiness in a way that can uproot this habitual tendency to grasp at things as existing from their own side. So, the root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. But another way we can think about it is like, the existence of the Buddhist teachings in the world depends upon there being people who devote their lives to studying and practicing the Buddhist teachings, right? And traditionally, those people, they take not only the refuge vows, but they take, the vows of an ordained person, right? Especially a fully ordained person. And so as part of those vows, they refrain from working for money, and they live on the charity of others, right? They live on the dana, the donations from others, in order that they can have the most possible time to devote to studying and practicing, meditating on, and teaching others, sharing with others the Buddhist teachings. So in a way, like the existence of the Buddhist teachings in the world depends upon those who uphold the teachings. Those who uphold the teachings, they live in the pratimoksha vows, right? But here it's probably talking more about as a personal in terms of our own personal practice, the development of the teachings, our own realization, our own experience of the Buddhist teachings in our mind depends upon our keeping, abandoning the pure morality of refraining from harming, and especially, keeping whatever pratimoksha vows we've taken. So, so the root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. So that's the end of the section on renunciation, right? Yeah, those 2 verses are renunciation in the Foundation of All Good Qualities. So why don't we'll look briefly at the verses of renunciation. In the 3, shall I do that? Or shall we meditate? Why don't we meditate a bit first? No. And then we'll look at 3 principal aspects of the path. So, I think to meditate, I won't give a kind of detailed, here, I'm going to, before we meditate, I'm going to upload this foundation. You guys online, do you have the Foundation of All Good Qualities? Teresa has, Urs has. Jessica, do you have the Foundation of All Good Qualities? You?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. Then you guys in here, if you need a copy, you can grab a prayer book. Otherwise, so what I think we'll do, instead of me giving a detailed instruction, now think about this, not think about this. We'll just take the verses I've explained, and then reflect on those, see what you can remember of what I've said, and then any aspects, anything you want to meditate, whether it's guru devotion, precious human rebirth, impermanence and death, refuge, we didn't really go over, and the suffering of the lower realms, we didn't really go over because it's not in the prayer, and then karma. And then, the drawbacks of samsara and the attitude of renunciation. So we went over kind of a lot already. So any of that, just that you feel like spending, well, let's just take 20 minutes to, to meditate on. Yeah, why don't we meditate for 20 minutes? Oh, excellent. You have copies there. Oh, that's the three principal aspects of the path. No, the foundation of all good qualities. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So get comfortable in your meditation posture. And yeah, if you need, then have a copy of Foundation of All Good Qualities. I'll put it here, but I can't, all the verses that we went over won't display on one page. Okay, Bay's uploading it in the chat also. You have it? I can do it also, Bay, if you want. Is it easier I do it? Be careful not to fall asleep, no? Right after lunch is always a bit of a danger. Okay, ready? Mhm. Yeah, so once again, just you can read through the verses of the Foundation of All Good Qualities that we've gone over, and reflect on different what it's saying there, and anything related to that you want to reflect on. So for mm, 20 minutes, maybe a little shorter. I'll see. So gradually relax your attention. Um, yeah, so let's continue with the foundation of all good qualities. I'll explain the section on renunciation, and then we'll, if there's any questions or comments, check. Mm. So here's the three principal aspects of the path. And this version of it is English translated by Lama Tsongkhpa and set out with headings. And the original doesn't have headings for each section. There's another version here at the center Casey handed out that's translated by Tibetan Buddhism, I believe. Yeah, 2003. I think it's available for free online also. Okay, so he opens up with a homage, as is traditional at the beginning of a Buddhist text, to begin with a homage in order to accumulate merit and clear away obstacles to completing the text. It says homage to my perfect gurus. So that's all he says about guru devotion. So in that homage, paying homage to the gurus, then it's kind of alluding to the topic of correctly relying upon one's gurus. And then he goes on to, there's another, a second traditional feature of a Buddhist text is the homage to compose. I mean, a promise to compose the text. It says the essential meaning, and it kind of explains why composing the text. The essential meaning of the victorious one's teachings, the path praised by all the holy victors and their sons or their children, the gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation. This I shall try to explain as much as I can. So he's also explaining like the greatness of the Lamrim, like what the Lamrim is. He's saying it's the essential meaning of all the victorious one's teachings. So he's saying all the victorious ones is an epithet for the Buddha. So all the Buddhist teachings. So it says this, this way of presenting the Buddhist teachings contains all the essential points, contains all the essential meanings of the Buddhist teachings. This is the path praised by all the holy victorious ones and their sons or their children. So all the Buddhas and their sons of the Buddhas or the children of the Buddhas are like are the bodhisattvas. Just like the children of a king or queen are in line to become the king or queen, then bodhisattvas are in line to become a Buddha. So yeah, the path praised by all so it's like the path of practice organized in the three types of beings. Those of, the being of the small capacity, middle capacity, and great capacity, and the different levels of aspiration. So the path praised by all the holy victorious ones and their children. The gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation. So the gateway means like it's the entranceway, the starting place of those who desire the liberation of freedom from samsara and the liberation of full enlightenment, or just happiness in future lives. Then the entranceway to start, achieving those is to understand these three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom realizing emptiness. And then he makes the actual promise to compose. I shall try to explain as much as I can. And then he's imploring us to listen. Those who are not attached to the pleasures of circling and samsara. So yeah, those who are not attached to basically the eight worldly concerns, all the pleasures in samsara, and who instead of chasing after pleasures of attachment, money and power and sense pleasures and partner and praise, and fame and so forth. So those who are not attached to the pleasures of circling, of samsara, who strive to make freedoms and endowments meaningful. So there you have reference to let's see, the 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses, or 10 endowments of the precious human rebirth, right? Contemplation on the precious human rebirth. On precious human rebirth. Those who strive to make freedoms and endowments meaningful, who entrust themselves to the path pleasing to the victorious ones, right? So who take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha and entrust themselves to the path of practice, the spiritual path of practice, revealed by or explained by the Buddhists. You fortunate ones, listen with a calm mind, right? So, yeah. So those who are not, too enamored with the pleasures of samsara, who strive to make their life, use their life in a most meaningful way, and entrust themselves or have some faith in the Buddhist path, saying, listen with a calm and focused mind. And then he actually explains how to generate, how to contemplate to generate the attitude of renunciation. So, yeah, of the topics, the preliminary topics, guru devotion, he only mentions in the homage. And then he mentions freedoms and endowments in this verse, persuading to listen. And then impermanence and death, he hasn't mentioned yet, it'll come below. Suffering of the lower realms, he doesn't mention. Refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, yeah, he doesn't mention. And then karma comes below. So the purpose of generating renunciation. So again, these are headings added by Lama Tsongkhpa Rinpoche. He's saying he's basing on a commentary probably by Pabonka Rinpoche or someone else. The purpose of generating renunciation, how to actually generate renunciation, and then the definition of having generated renunciation. Right, so there's these 3 verses related to specifically to renunciation. No, I'm yawning a lot today. No. Huh? Yes, that'd be great. Yeah. Yes. That's the point. Yes, caffeinated. No problem. Okay, so the purpose of generating renunciation first. Without the complete intention to definitely to be free from circling, there is no way to pacify attachment, seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of samsara. Also, by craving for cyclic existence, embodied beings are continually bound. Therefore, at the very beginning, seek renunciation. I'll go ahead and read all 3 verses, and then we'll come back and explain. Freedoms and endowments are difficult to find, and life has no time to spare. By gaining familiarity with this, attraction to the appearances of this life is reversed. By thinking over and over again that actions and their effects are unbetraying, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence, attraction to the appearances of future lives is reversed. When, by having trained in that way, there is no arising, even for a second, of attraction to the perfections of cyclic existence, and all day and night the intention seeking liberation arises, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. Right, so start from the verse above. He says, the purpose of generating renunciation. So the purpose is without the complete intention definitely to be free from circling. There is no way to pacify attachment to pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling. So circling, that word korwa, in Tibetan, the word for, so samsara is a Sanskrit term, right? Samskara, or samsara is a Sanskrit term. In Tibetan, that's translated as korwa, right? Which has the connotation to circle, to go on in a circle. So that's why they use that. So when they say free from circling, it means free from samsara, really, because the idea being that you circle from one life to another. You take rebirth, then experience old age, sickness, and then die, and then again take rebirth again and again. So it's like going around in a circle, and taking from one rebirth to the next. So without the complete intention, definitely to be free from circling. So that's what renunciation is the intention, wishing definitely to be free from samsara. So he's saying without renunciation, in effect, there is no way to pacify attachment, seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling, of samsara, right? So he's saying without some kind of renunciation, recognizing the fundamental dissatisfactoriness of pleasures in samsara, then we habitually chase after them. because that's what we've done since beginningless time. So just like an animal, just all it thinks about is having food, shelter, safety, and then and procreation, right? It's like a habitual thing. So we also have the same kind of habitual tendencies to, but are much more sophisticated, right? To have the pleasures of the senses, things that we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch that are pleasurable. And then, and within those, I mean, the pleasure of sexual contact is one of the most powerful because it involves all of those and also involves this deeply rooted instinct just to procreate, to reproduce, which biologically, we have very strongly. But then also, because we have human intelligence, then we also have much more, sophisticated, complex attachments to praise from others, which even animals have. If you praise a dog, it really likes it. To praise from others, and then, but power, which animals also have, attachment, wanting to have power and influence. And then wealth, and acquire wealth and property. So, so without recognizing the fundamental inability of those things to satisfy us, to make us happy, to bring us lasting peace and inner well-being, then there's no way to stop chasing after those things, right? So there's no way to pacify attachment, seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling. Also, by craving for cyclic existence, again, samsara, by craving for samsara, embodied beings are continuously bound. So it's this paradox that by wanting happiness in the small-minded way, by craving after these kind of hedonistic pleasures, short-term pleasures of wealth, power, praise, fame, and so forth, that is by that very thing that we're bound in a process of suffering, right? That we spend this life not preparing for future lives at all, not thinking about the fact that death is coming and what's going to happen after that. But we just put that aside, because to think about death, to talk about death, is something that makes us feel in the short term very kind of unhappy and maybe scares us. So it's not, not something, worldly people think about. So instead of, with no preparation from future lives, just looking in this life, what can I get? How can I have more wealth, more possessions, more pleasurable experiences, or power, fame, and so forth? So by craving for cyclic existence, so by that kind of craving for the short-term, temporal happiness, embodied beings, means beings who take rebirth in bodies, are continuously bound in samsara. Therefore, at the very beginning, seek renunciation. So for these reasons, then we need to try to generate the mind of renunciation, or at the outset of the path. Then he says, freedoms and endowments are difficult to find. So precious human rebirth, which we spoke about earlier, right? The 8 freedoms and 10 endowments are very difficult to find for the reasons I already explained. And life has no time to spare. So there he mentions death, right? That this life won't last long. Human life, the human lifespan is not fixed. Every moment we're moving towards death. There's countless causes of death, very few causes of things that protect them. No matter what we do, there's no way to avoid death. So freedom and endowments are difficult to find, and life has no time to spare. And the time of death, of course, is uncertain. So there's no time to waste. By gaining familiarity with this, means thinking this over and over again, attraction to the appearances of this life is reversed, right? So this is kind of what I was saying, is if we don't deeply think about the fact of death, then it doesn't have that much effect on our mind. But if we deeply think about the fact of death, then it does really look like, what's the point of hoarding up a lot of money? What's the point of becoming famous? What's the point of, being very popular and being kind of, going to, even like, what's the point of going to a lot of different places? Because in the end, we're going to die, right? So, so we need to create source of happiness that will carry us through the process of death, that will prepare us for death and make us confident at the time of death. So we all want to, at the end of our lives, be able to look back and feel happy with the lives we've led. And also, many people, especially people in their old age, retiring or coming close to death, they, for many people, they feel like one of the most, when they look back on their lives, the thing they're proudest of is like, for example, if you raise children who turn out well and have grandchildren, and so you've used your life to, help other people to have happy lives in your family, or as an employer, or in charitable work. When people are at the end of their life and about to leave this life, if they can look back and see that, through the way they've lived their life, they've given some concrete benefit to others, pointed to something that they look to and say, that's really helpful to some other people, then that's one of the most rewarding things, I think. So, and that comes about through not being attached just to what I want, what I need, what I like in this life, but rather to seeing that just, chasing after what I want, need, and like is not fundamentally satisfying. That it's much better way to use life is to do something in our lives that bring about some benefit to others. So by gaining familiarity with this, attraction to the appearances of this life is reversed, right? So thinking about the incredible value of this precious human life, the opportunities it affords us, and how it won't last long, then should compel us to really seek, really ask the question, what is the most meaningful life? How do I take the essence of this opportunity that I have? What's the best possible thing I can do with this life? And that leads us to reduce attraction to, personal desire, objects of our own personal desires. By gaining familiarity with this, attraction to the appearances of this life is reversed. So to be less grasping at, pleasures of this life, and think more about preparing ourselves for our future lives, and then also, in the long term, as thinking about how to use our life to benefit others. Although that of course is not really here. This is just in the small scope. There's not so much discussion of using our life to benefit others. Then he goes on. So those first two lines there. This is a very pithy verse. This is very often quoted by teachers, because these first two lines essentially, show us how to cut attraction to this life, attachment to this life. And then the second two lines show us how to cut attachment to samsara as a whole. So he says, by thinking over and over again that actions, meaning karma, and their effects, so the karmic law of cause and effect, by thinking over and over again that actions and their effects are unbetraying, meaning, right, the very first law of the four main characteristics of karma, the first one is that karma is certain, in that when you create non-virtuous karma, it produces a suffering result. When we create virtuous karma, it ripens as a pleasant, a happy experience. So in that way, it's certain. So thinking over and over again about that actions and their effects are unbetraying means they're definite. And I mean also the other aspects of karma. Once we create a karmic cause, then the power of it to produce a result increases exponentially. Just like if you plant one seed of rice, then it produces exponentially more grains of rice than itself, right? It's kind of similar to that. And then, so there's the four characteristics of karma, that karma is certain, the power of karma increases, karmic seeds increase exponentially. Karma once produced doesn't just dissipate, it doesn't go away. It will definitely produce its result as long as there's no counteracting force to destroy it, or it produces a result and then it's exhausted, right? So, and then karmas that we haven't created, we don't experience, right? So we only experience the effects of karma that we've created. We don't experience the effects of karma that we haven't created. So those things are all like certain or unbetraying about the karmic law of cause and effect, right? The four main characteristics. So by thinking over and over again that actions and their effects are unbetraying, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence. So thinking in general about all the sufferings of samsara. There's the 6 types of suffering, the 8 types of suffering, the 3 types of suffering of samsara. All these are all drawbacks of samsara. So the 3 types is, the suffering of suffering, what we ordinarily consider as painful experiences. The suffering of change, what we ordinarily consider as pleasant sensations, but which don't last. They change into unpleasant sensation. You know, like if you've been standing up for a long time and then you feel it feels uncomfortable to stand. It's painful to stand. Then you sit. At first, it feels very comfortable to sit, but then the suffering of sitting has already begun in that very moment. What we experience is the relief of the suffering of standing, but then the longer we sit, the more and more the suffering of sitting becomes manifest. So any suffering in samsara. I mean, any pleasant experience in samsara is like that. It's in the nature of suffering of change. And then there's pervasive compounding suffering, which is just the fact of being in this situation where we don't have control over what happens to us. There's no certainty about what's going to happen today, tomorrow, and then especially when we're going to die, and then at the time of death, where we take rebirth, right? So because we're under the control of karma and afflictive emotions, we're so strongly habituated to those that even without making effort, jealousy, anger, doubt arises. Afflictive emotions arise. Not like, the attitude of bodhicitta, we have to make a lot of effort to have that aspiration arise. It doesn't just happen. But that's what we're aiming to change, right? Switch those. So that positive emotions and thoughts and emotions instinctively arise because we're so strongly habituated to those, and the others, anger, attachment, and others don't arise at all. So, repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence. So by thinking of those, about karma, how we're under the control of karma, law of cause and effect, and how, for as long as that's the case, we'll be in samsara and experience all the miseries of samsara. The suffering of change, pervasive compounding suffering. Then thinking about that again and again and again, we generate a wish to be free from that whole process of dying and taking rebirth through the force of karma and afflictive emotions. So that's how to generate renunciation, right? And then the measure of having generated the mind of renunciation. So it says, even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not, sorry. I skipped a verse. Yeah, the definition of having generated renunciation. When by having trained in that way, so by having contemplated as described above in those two verses, when by having trained in that way, there is no arising even for a second of attraction to the perfections of cyclic existence. So it said like when having thought about the faults of samsara, then when we see, pleasures of samsara and like when we see them like a tiger sees grass. Think about a tiger is a carnivore, right? They're hunting for, rabbits and deer and things. They're looking for warm flesh and blood, right? But the creatures they're hunting for are walking through grass, right? So the tiger, when they look around, the grass is like almost like they don't even notice it. They don't care about the grass. They're looking for the prey. So like that, we should, when we see the pleasures of samsara, and to us it just looks like totally not interesting, not satisfying. Just like if a tiger eats grass, it's not satisfying to them at all. It doesn't feed their hunger, right? It doesn't nourish them. So we have to change our mindset so that it's like, going out to restaurants and I don't know, parties and, drinking and all the, and fame and wealth and praise and money, that those things, okay, we can take it or leave it, but it's not interesting. We realize that that's not fundamentally satisfying to me. What I need is understanding. What I need is compassion. What I need is mental focus. What I need is, faith and the joy that comes from Dharma practice. What I need is wisdom. What I need is like, Dharma instruction and so forth. So when we recognize that we actually get much more pleasure from using our lives in a meaningful way to serve others and to develop our positive qualities, our inner positive qualities of mind. Then all the pleasures of samsara, it's like, yes, we can enjoy, but it's not, we can taste that, like we can taste the chocolate, but it's not like we're looking to those things, the eight worldly concerns, as something that's, with the hope that it fundamentally satisfies us, right? So we become disenchanted in that way. So when by having trained in that way, there is no arising, even for a second, of attraction to the perfections of cyclic existence, and all day and night, the intention seeking liberation arises. So day and night, we continually are yearning for this state of liberation from samsara, which is not easy, right? Because it's not like we've been there and then come back and then want to go there again, right? It's a state we've never experienced, right? And so, and it's kind of hard to imagine what that would like. One of the most what that would be like. One of the most common questions I get in Introduction to Buddhist courses is like, you know, what would it be like to be free from samsara anyway? It seems in one way like it might just be totally boring. Like there's no, you know, there's no, kind of the joy of life, the ups and downs of life, which is it's a serious question. It's a good question. In a way, I mean, even in the Mahayana sutras, it's described as just freedom from samsara as just kind of a static state, no? That you can abide in the state of peace for a very, very, very long time. And then the Buddhists come and tell you, you know, there's other sentient beings suffering. You should work for their well-being and then rise out of that. So I think, you know, it does look like much more interesting to become fully enlightened, where you're continually involved in activity to benefit others. That looks like quite something more desirable than just abiding in a state of peace. But when all day and night the intention seeking liberation arises, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. So this means this desire to be free from the suffering of samsara, and then, you know, we can always add in enlightenment when it arises. But here, renunciation is really just the wish to be free from the wish to achieve liberation, right, which is freedom from the suffering of samsara. When that wish arises continuously and spontaneously, it's kind of spontaneously and continuously part of an attitude that you have at some level of your awareness. Then you've generated renunciation. Okay, we've gone over the break time, the middle time. So let's just take a 5-minute break. We don't have much time left. And then, yeah, when you come back, let's see if there's any questions about anything in the renunciation and the first two scopes, the scope of a small and middling capable being. Okay? 5-minute break. Let's continue, yeah. Okay. One question here.
Oh, one question. I think I may have missed this because you mentioned the part when you talked about the patimoksha vows, about refraining from working for money and dedicating time to teach others. You're
That's
talking
for
about just the
monastics.
monastics only, not the lay practitioner.
Right, monastics
Okay,
only.
so for the lay practitioner, that's just the precepts. The
main vows for the 5 lay vows.
5 lay vows.
And then the other advice that goes along with taking refuge. But the pratimoksha vows is the 5 lay vows mainly. And then I mean that's the pratimoksha vows, right? Then if you take bodhisattva vows or tantric vows, that's additional. Yeah. So anything about so remember, I mean the Lamrim is divided according to the motivation of the beings of small, middling, and great capacity, the 3 levels of motivation. So we've covered the first 2 levels of motivation, and then and those are all included in the 3 principal aspects of the path in the mind of renunciation, right? So yeah, any questions about those first 2 levels? Yeah, Teresa? Or no?
Renunciation. Oh, I put my hand down, but my hand is still up.
Okay.
What do I want to ask about renunciation? Not even sure what my question is, which is often the case for me. It's like what my personal experience is, is that I think I understand renunciation, and then I get a different level of it, and then a different level, and then a different level. So I guess my question is that normal? Is that your experience? Is that, yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, all of the different realizations on the Buddhist path, this is one thing I saw a lot, when we debate different aspects of the Buddhist path, is that yes, there's like a definition of what it is. And so that kind of gives it gives like the misnomer that it's like you don't have anything, and then suddenly you have this, and then it's this thing, that there's a kind of hard line in the sand. I mean, there are definitely, like with uncontrived renunciation, there is like when this attitude that Tsongkhapa describes, actually, that those lines from the three principal aspects of the path are often used as the definition of renunciation. When it's saying, and all day and night, the intention seeking liberation arises, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. Those two lines are often quoted as being, this line showing the definition of renunciation. When there is no arising even for a second of attraction to the perfections of psychoexistence, and all day and night the intention seeking liberation arises. But there's a whole range of that. No, we build up to that gradually. So yes, it's like, I guess, yeah, with renunciation, it's because, attachment is very, like, whereas anger, is obviously very destroys our happiness. It's very destructive. So it's a lot easier to kind of reduce anger in general. Whereas attachment, there's a lot of pleasure that goes with it, right? With viewing the objects of our attachment, with experiencing, the objects of our attachment, that it's much more difficult to see the faults with it, to see the problem with it. And it's much more difficult to reduce. It's like oil and cloth, or like dirt stuck to oily cloth. It's difficult to cleanse it out of our minds. And so, but that's why it's so important to think again and again about like different kinds of happiness and joy and satisfaction, feelings of contentment that they have, and which are more superficial and unstable and actually leave us kind of feeling sort of empty. Like an easy one to see is, it has to do with, you could also think about in terms of physiology, if you like dopamine and serotonin. But like an easy one is, the pleasure that comes from watching some funny videos or something on your smartphone. Like, yes, in the moment it's kind of nice, enjoyable, but then, it's so much so that you might want to see another one. But then after a half hour of doing that, you put the phone down and you kind of feel worse than before. It's like, you don't feel really any better. Yes, there might be a little, has laughs and a little bit better, but it's not like you feel particularly good, no, in any deep way, no. So it's so important to compare different types of satisfaction that we have. Whereas, like, the satisfaction you get from doing one good meditation session on like loving kindness or compassion or whatever, that there's some kind of brings some sort of deeper focus and sense of well-being, or really connecting with a friend, or really doing something kind, for doing some kind of offering some service to others, which brings a much more substantial kind of lasting and meaningful satisfaction. So it's basically about that comparison, like looking at, how all the short-term pleasures in samsara, this sort of self-centered pleasures in samsara. Just to say that is a broad, it's a broad name of a whole thing. We need to look at particular instances again and again and again and see how, those things really don't, is that fundamentally what I want? How I want to use my time, how I want to use this life, and what are the long-term repercussions if I just chase after these short-term kind of dopamine hits again and again and again on my life. We can see, like in this life, there's people who get addicted to like gaming, video games, online. And yeah, what do they want? Because it's a little bit of win. They want to win. Or people get addicted to gambling, and it ruins their life. No, people get addicted to sex. No, it totally ruins. I mean, look at Jeffrey Epstein. Just let his life be dominated by this, a sexual attraction to young women. It totally ruined his life. He ended up committing suicide in prison. Right? Even a wealthy, super wealthy, guy, like with a lifestyle most people would envy. Right? So just let life be dominated by attachment. Or, people, workaholics. Just even they don't give time and attention to their kids and family because they're craving after the success in business or what their career. So there are all kinds of different, attachment. So looking at that, how attachment in different ways, it has the potential to ruin our lives, but even in a small scale, it makes us spend so much time on meaningless things. Things that, what does it add up to is not much. So, and rather think about what's the alternative? How can I use my life for more things that are more and more meaningful in general and things that are more meaningful to me and bring more and more like lasting satisfaction? Yeah. And then think about the whole bigger picture of samsara. I mean, it really looks like, I sometimes I think about, like I said, I'm over 50 now. So I don't know, more I think about, okay, next life, like what's the next life going to be like? It's like, I don't really, even I had very good parents. I was born in America, in Virginia, quite a good place, but it's like, all those little kind of things you have to go through as a child, like not understanding what do your parents want you to do, what can you do, what can you not do, trying to figure out all the rules, then have to go to school and meet all these new kids and then study all this stuff you don't really not interested in, but you have to do anyway, and then exams, and then then you get sick sometimes, and then sometimes school's so miserable you just want to be sick so that you can be at home and just watch TV, and then and then when you're a teenager, it just gets worse, right? And then you go to college and it's like, okay, nicer, but then you get out of college and then what to do? There's all these things like I have to go through all that again, And then that's just one life, next life, and then again, and then again, and again, and there's no end. That's what samsara is. Like even though, yeah, there's a lot of, when you're in a fortunate state of samsara, there's a lot of things you can enjoy, but all the garbage you have to go through, you have to go through that again and again and again and again, and there's no end to it, right? So the alternative is try to, try to reduce that attachment that keeps us bound in samsara, attachment to things that are not fundamentally satisfying. Try to increase the kind of, the well-being we get through doing things like generating contentment, generating mental focus, generating caring about others, reducing selfish concern, increasing caring about others, generating more wisdom, more kindness, more patience, all these positive qualities that they bring you, a deeper sense of satisfaction in the moment when they're present in the mind, and they also lead you towards a long-term enlightenment, basically, right?
I think that's my question, what you just said, that in terms of renunciation, if what I'm doing with my life is spending time developing those qualities, then I see how I get attached to developing those qualities. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like,
Yes.
if I can't develop those qualities, this is not a good day. But this thing that's happening is not a good thing that's happening because I'm not working on developing those qualities.
But that's okay,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, to a degree. I mean, of course, yeah, there can be a degree of attachment. Generally, though, attachment is when you observe not like positive qualities. That's just like a desire for those, right? But attachment is generally defined as when you observe a contaminated phenomena, right? Means a contaminated phenomena, meaning something that has been produced by the force of karma and afflictive emotions, right? So like positive qualities, loving kindness and compassion, it's not a contaminated phenomena. It's not something that is by its nature, it has a nature to disturb the peace of the mind when you engage with it, right? It's something that will lead you to more and more improvement. So yes, I mean, and that kind of disappointment with yourself or feeling kind of bad about the day when you aren't able to develop positive qualities, make some progress in the path, that kind of spurs you on. That's like a force that's pushing you to each day use it, try to make tomorrow go better, right? So that's kind of helping you, Although, yeah, it's a bit painful, but it's like pushing you in the right direction, right?
It's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, Bae. Yeah.
So maybe I'm jumping ahead a bit to bodhicitta, but I think the examples that you were giving about like doing it again and again, then the bodhisattva are doing that too. But I guess my question is what
Doing it again and again, you may take a rebirth again and again in
exactly,
samsara.
but
Yeah.
with the different minds, right?
Mhm.
And of course, I can't imagine what their minds are like, but I have to say sometimes just to look at taking this path of just even imagining myself doing that, sometimes it generates a sense of fear, like, oh,
Mm.
that's very daunting. How can
Yeah.
anyone imagine doing that?
Yeah.
If you
No, it's true. It is true. It is daunting to think to voluntarily take rebirth again and again in order to benefit sentient beings. But I think it would be radically different from the experience we have, no? Because like what I'm describing, my whole, all the trials and tribulations of my youth and thinking of doing that again and again and again, all those things are, I mean, they were so difficult because of the experience with a lot of confusion, not knowing why I'm here, what's the point of this life, even though clearly I have some good imprints, but like there's no clarity, that knowing, like there's no sense of purpose. It's just like I'm just in this situation and I have to endure it. Like, whereas I think for a bodhisattva, their rebirth is completely different. We're taking rebirth through the force of karma and afflictive emotions, right? A bodhisattva is taking rebirth through the force of accumulation of merit and prayers. So they voluntarily making prayers to take rebirth in this form in order to benefit others. And yeah, there's a lot of questions about, well, even as a child, like what do they know? But yeah, but I think there's quite some, yeah, I have to think there's different levels of bodhisattvas, right? So it could vary. But those who really have control over their rebirth means from the path of seeing upwards. You have to think like they're in their minds, there no afflictive emotions are arising. There's no attachment, no anger. There's just kind of peace, calm, and joy in being able to do something to benefit sentient beings, right? So I don't know. Sometimes you look at you're around some of the little tukus and you get a sense like, yeah, they have very different sort of attitude, no? Some of them, you're around, you kind of, I don't know. For me, that helps to kind of imagine what it might be like to be like a bodhisattva and then take rebirth again and again. Yeah. But I think, yeah, it's very different from our experience. It's not, and also that the bodhisattva, they're not really in samsara. They're not under the control of afflictive emotions and karma. Yeah. But it is daunting, no? I agree. Okay. Is that enough about renunciation? Okay. Yeah. So then we move on. Just think if I missed anything. I don't think so. I think it's enough. Let's look. We move on in the. Let's in the foundation of all good qualities. Well, actually, we'll stick with the three principal aspects of the path, because it gives a much more detailed description of how to meditate on bodhicitta. That's the next thing in the foundation of all good qualities. But the three principal aspects of the path gives a much more detailed description and much more vivid about how to meditate on bodhicitta. So we'll look at that first. Yeah. Says the purpose of generating the mind of enlightenment. Yeah, so this is again this label by Lama Tsongkhpa, the purpose of generating the mind of enlightenment. Even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, meaning bodhicitta, right? Mind of enlightenment is just another way of translating the same Tibetan term that we usually translate as bodhicitta. Even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, it does not become the cause of the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Yeah. So it's just saying, you know, even if you've generated renunciation, the aspiration to be free from the suffering of samsara, that as long as you don't have an aspiration to achieve full enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings, then anything you do, it doesn't, even you have the potential for full enlightenment, you have Buddha nature, the potential for full enlightenment, then nothing you do, as long as you don't have the attitude of bodhicitta, nothing you do, even, you know, with renunciation, becomes a cause for actualizing your own potential of enlightenment. Nothing you do becomes a cause for your future enlightenment until you have that attitude of bodhicitta. So if you want to, you know, fully develop all your positive qualities and experience the peerless bliss and, you know, and wisdom and compassion and energy, you know, enlightened activity of a fully enlightened being, then from the start you have to generate this attitude of bodhicitta. So, right, even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by, means accompanied by or combined with the mind of enlightenment. Combined with means the two go together. Here, this term is translated as possessed by, means like, so how would renunciation and bodhicitta go together? It would mean like the more you increase one, the more the other increases by force of that, and vice versa. So, I mean, without renunciation, you can't really generate the mind of bodhicitta, because bodhicitta is based on great compassion, right? Great compassion is the mind observing the suffering of all sentient beings and wanting to free them from that. But deep compassion is not just for the painful experiences beings have, but it's compassion that wants to free them from every suffering they have, the suffering, the suffering of change, and especially and mainly pervasive compounding suffering, the state of being like a slave under the control of karma and afflictive emotions, right? So without understanding how at the deepest level sentient beings suffer because of ignorance in their own minds and because they're habituated to afflictive emotions, anger and attachment and jealousy and selfishness in their own minds, and thereby they create karma, then only by understanding that complete situation of being in samsara that beings are in can we generate really deep compassion. To understand that and have that kind of compassion in relation to others, we have to have that understanding in relation to ourselves first, right? So it's only by understanding deeply how we are in a fundamentally dissatisfying state of being trapped in samsara, dying and taking rebirth uncontrollably again and again, and having compassion for ourselves first means seeing that we suffer in this way and wishing for ourselves to be free from it. In a way, is compassion for ourselves. In a way, it's just renunciation. It's the same thing. It's just two names for the same thing. Like this deep self-compassion, wishing to be free from samsara, and renunciation, wishing to be free from samsara. It's the same thing, right? So we have to have that renunciation in our own minds in order to genuinely have a deep compassion for other sentient beings. So, and thereby, like when we have that, then the stronger our renunciation, the more our compassion for others, and thereby the stronger our own aspiration to achieve enlightenment becomes. And then the stronger our wish to accomplish the welfare of others by achieving enlightenment, the stronger our own renunciation and are looking at, the pleasures of samsara as utterly useless becomes, right? So that way, the one is possessed by the other. They mutually help increase each other. So even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, then it does not become the cause of the perfect bliss of enlightenment. The perfect bliss of unsurpassed means the highest. There is no higher enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So the wise, right from the beginning, they try to generate not only renunciation, but they also generate bodhicitta at the same time. Yes.
Enlightenment.
No, enlightenment is
because the verse is talking about enlightenment, and the way I understand enlightenment is basically understanding the realization of reality, how reality is, which is emptiness. But I don't see bodhicitta coming here.
no. This term, the mind of enlightenment, is bodhicitta. This here, let me circle it. So here, this mind of enlightenment. That's just another translation for the Tibetan term, which means bodhicitta. Yeah. Kunzup semke. Yeah, semke. Yeah, literally, like a literal this is more like a literal translation. But see, bodhicitta and bodhicitta, bodhi means enlightenment, chitta means mind. So it's the mind aspiring to enlightenment, bodhicitta. And then in Tibetan is semke. Sem means mind. Ke means to generate, but it means generate. Yeah, the bodhi is not really there in the Tibetan term. Well, but it's janchup semke. Yeah, to generate the mind aspiring to enlightenment. Yeah. So, but in English, we just usually use the Tibetan term. But enlightenment means the abandonment of all faults and the perfection of all positive qualities, right? In short. So, but you're saying here?
I thought I heard you say that even if renunciation is developed, if you don't have compassion or wish to liberate others from sufferings, it is not good enough cause for you to get enlightenment.
True. Yeah.
But then I was not seeing in any of the words here about the compassion for others, or like others
No.
don't come in the picture. I just thought that this
Right.
verse was still about myself, like generating the renunciation and then generating the mind of getting the realization of the reality. And then I'm solid to get into the path of enlightenment.
Right.
I'm still not up to helping others.
Okay. No. So yeah, I did add in the helping others and compassion because that's the main cause of the mind of enlightenment. Like bodhicitta, the main cause of this bodhicitta is the wish thinking, in order to accomplish the welfare of others, I must achieve enlightenment, right? And so there's it has two aspirations. Remember, we went over this in Discovering Buddhism, like at the beginning of this module on bodhicitta, that the bodhicitta is a mind possessing two aspirations, a causal aspiration and then like an accompanying aspiration. The causal aspiration, meaning it comes before, is great compassion, right? Where you see the suffering of others and think, I myself must do something to free others from suffering. And then so that's the cause. And dependence upon that, you think, well, what can I do? What's the best thing I can do? And then you think, then you realize, oh, the best thing I can do is become fully enlightened, right? And then there's a secondary, the accompanying aspiration, then you have an aspiration for full enlightenment, right? That goes together. And then the main mind that observes our own future enlightenment is bodhicitta. It's accompanied by an aspiration to achieve that. And those two came about in dependence upon great compassion, which is the cause, yeah. So that's what I was adding it in. Yeah. So then how to generate the mind of enlightenment? Yeah, and these are really juicy verses of the mind, a very graphic kind of analogy. of how to generate the mind of enlightenment. But we can use this same analogy to generate renunciation as well. So Tsongkhapa says, swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers are in such a condition, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Right? So you see there, he says, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment, but he doesn't mention anything about enlightenment, actually. It's all about compassion. It's all about the suffering of other sentient beings, right? So he's saying, swept away. So think of, what does he say? He said at the second from the last line, thinking that all mothers are in such a condition. So this is like alluding to the sevenfold cause and effect method of generating bodhicitta, where the first cause is you recognize that all sentient beings have been your kind mother, or many people, your father, brother, sister, spouse, anyone who's been very kind to you. You take as an example the people who've been the kindest to you in this life, and then think in the past life, there were other people who were kind to me like that, and in a life before that, and a life before that. And since I've had infinite past lives, then there's no sentient being I can point to and say, in some lifetime, they have not been incredibly and selflessly kind to me. So then we try to think of all other sentient beings in that way, as people who've been as kind to me as my kind mother or father or brother or sister of this life, right? We try to think of all sentient beings as having been incredibly kind to us in some life. So looking at all sentient beings in this way as my kind mothers. So what is the condition they're in? Thinking that all mothers are in such a condition. What condition are they in? Swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. So just to unfold the analogy first, imagine, your mother of this life, like, I think my dear old mother, she's 83. She wants to come visit me in December. My father, also very kind. And then, a very kind sister. I'm fortunate to have many people been kind to me in this life. But so imagine if they all suddenly, there was they all fell into a river. You were on a picnic by, I don't know, the Cairn, a river. There's a rushing river. And then suddenly the ledge, the riverbank you're sitting on, it collapses and they all fall in. No, but you're standing on the riverbank still. So you see them, they're being swept away by this powerful river. Not only that, okay, here it gets a little difficult. I can't really go on with my little analogy anymore. Because how are they tied by, they're tied up somehow? Then it becomes a bit, But here I always think of Houdini. You remember this magician in the United States who would he'd tie himself up and then jump in a box and have someone lock the box and have someone throw it in a river, like that, like in the winter time in, New York. And then going over the Niagara Falls and stuff. So anyway, so imagine, these kind beings swept away in a river. Not only they're in a river, but their hands and feet are bound, are tied, Not only their hands and feet are tied, they're in an iron net. They're like wrapped in an iron net. And not only they're in an iron net, okay, maybe if it's in the daytime, someone could see them and help them, but it's at night, There's no moonlight, no starlight, no light. It's pitch black out. It's totally hopeless. Like, how are they possibly going to survive that? And then they're endlessly, and then he leaves the analogy. But like that. So it's like thinking, about this utterly pitiful state that we and other sentient beings are in, swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. What are the four powerful rivers? There's two ways to posit them. I only remember one now. I'll check on the other one tonight. But the one is birth, old age, sickness, and death. That as soon as we're born, we inevitably, from the very first moment, we're aging. As soon as we're aging, inevitably we're going to have sickness, because the elements and the winds in the body are by nature imbalanced. If they're imbalanced now, eventually they get out of balance, and then we get sick, and then eventually we're going to die. So what's inevitable? We have birth in samsara. We have birth, aging, sickness, and death. So swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. and then tied by the tight bonds of karma so hard to undo. Remember, karma is unbetraying. We blindly, without understanding the karmic law of cause and effect, we do things that are harmful to ourselves, harmful to others. We create karma, and then results of that karma. So, but you think of like animals, they have no idea. Most human beings have no idea that that's why they experience suffering and happiness. So we're completely bound by this, karma. And then caught in the iron net of self-grasping. So this is, selfishness. Here, I think, yeah, I'll look at Pabonko's commentary tonight on these two lines, because there's a question like, what does self-grasping exactly mean here? And then how is it different from ignorance? Because self-grasping is a kind of ignorance, right? But I think here it's probably more like selfishness. Let me just look at the Tibetan real quick, make sure it doesn't have it more clearly. Daksin, Daksin Jaki Droy Buzuzu. Mare Mube Machin Kunitip. No, it has Daksin. That's which is usually translated as self-grasping. But here, it might mean, it might mean selfishness, selfish concern. Caught in the iron net of selfish concern. It could be that, just thinking, exclusively about yourself and not thinking about others. Because that is, gives rise to attachment and anger, all the other afflictive emotions. But it could be, a deeper, like this fundamental, usually daksin, what's translated here as self-grasping. Usually it means the kind of ignorance, grasping at self and others existing from their own side. It's more like, grasping at the type of self exists. Not a selfish concern, but grasping at the way the self exists as something that exists independently, in and of its own right, from its own side. So in that case, if that's the case, then caught in the iron net of self-grasping, then completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance. Here, ignorance would mean more like ignorance thinking that past and future lives don't exist, that liberation from samsara does not exist, that there is no enlightenment, that the karma, the law of cause and effect, does not exist. That kind of ignorance, just totally not knowing about, these different positive possibilities that we have. So completely enveloped by the darkness of ignorance, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence. So what I was describing earlier, how we take rebirth. Being in samsara means there's no end. You take rebirth again and again and again and again, endlessly. Endlessly reborn in cyclic existence. And then while we're in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings. What I described earlier again, the suffering, the suffering of change, pervasive compounding suffering. We're continually experiencing one of those, So seeing what a terrible condition this is to be in, thinking that all of these sentient beings who've been our kind mother, been kind to us in different ways as our mothers and so forth, are in this condition, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So here you can change this line, these last two lines. You can say, thinking that how I am in such a condition, generate the supreme mind of renunciation, right? You can use the same contemplation. It's very powerful to generate renunciation. You can contemplate like this, as the first 6 lines describe, in relation to oneself, to generate renunciation. You contemplate like this in relation to others, to generate bodhicitta, great compassion and bodhicitta. And then, so this whole verse is why it is 8a. This is all added. That's why there's an asterisk there, because it's added by Lama Tsongkhpa Rinpoche. So here Lama Tsongkhpa Rinpoche is taking like from the definition of renunciation above and formulating a similar definition of bodhicitta. I don't think Rinpoche probably made it up. It's probably found in other, older Tibetan commentaries, and Rinpoche just added it here in the English. But I'll just read it and then we'll conclude. In short, if like the mother whose cherished son has fallen into a pit of fire and who experiences even 1 second of his suffering as an unbearable eternity, your reflection on the suffering of all mother sentient beings has made it impossible for you to bear their suffering even 1 second. So you contemplate in that way, and the wish seeking for enlightenment arises without effort. Then you have realized the supreme precious mind of enlightenment. Anyway, we'll come back tomorrow. To that tomorrow. We're out of time now. So let's. Is there any final questions about any of that I just explained? Okay.
I just want to say quickly, what you just explained answered my question, because how utterly heartbreaking is it that I wished my whole life that I could have the leisure and the time to practice. And now the disappointment comes, I'm not practicing hard enough. I'm not doing it right. The day's not going right. I'm not in the right place. I'm not in the, so developing compassion for myself, just that's my situation. That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
You have to be
Anyway.
gentle with yourself, Teresa. Think long term. Don't get, I know that's another, just like when we were talking about Jessica's comment about, how difficult guru devotion is, and how I think as Westerners, we tend to get a bit uptight about it and make it more like dramatic than Tibetans do. It's the same with our own practice, like, because we're new to Buddhism, we really, we come at it at a different angle, usually because we've had a lot of suffering in our lives somehow, and we see how much Buddhism helps, and so we really cherish it, and we really want to practice like well and accomplish something in this life, and then we tend to get a bit uptight, and then when things don't go the way we want, we get more disappointed because of that. Whereas Tibetans, their approach is like totally different. I mean, partly just because they're born into being Buddhist, right? So they have a much more relaxed attitude, but partly because I think their perspective is just much more long term. Like they're more accustomed to just thinking in terms of, many, many lives we have to practice. And so, it gives a kind of a healthy, gentle approach. Like, yes, I'll practice and try to use each day well, but when I can't, like, because I just feel like I'm a little burnt out, I need to relax, I just need to kind of step back and enjoy things a little bit, like, that's okay. That's part of a healthy practice, is we recognize, when to push and when to just relax and just kind of enjoy. And that's one of the, I think the best lessons I've had from being around, like, as a monk, especially, like, you get to be around your teachers a bit more than lay people. Like with Lama Tsongkhpa Rinpoche, see all the people, his attendants and stuff, they're all monastics, right? And with many teachers. So, and you see, like, I've seen from being around Lama Tsongkhpa Rinpoche, someone who's like the epitome of like pushing hard to practice all the time. He's always pushing the students to practice harder and harder. But when you're around Rinpoche, when he's just like having a meal, traveling, he's so relaxed. He's like, I remember once I got to have lunch with Rinpoche at the Taj Hotel in Bangalore. We had a North Indian thali, and Rinpoche is just telling me about, like, they gave us a potato patty, and Rinpoche is telling me how, the potato patties they make in in Solukhumbu, they're much nicer, and they make it like this and this and this. And you can tell Rinpoche, he really likes potatoes, and he really likes them made into like a fried potato patty. But like this one's not quite as good as the ones, they make over here. And then when dessert comes also, even Rinpoche is diabetic, right? So he can't really have, but you see, he kind of looks at desserts like, that looks really good. Can I have a taste of that? And it's like, they enjoy. Also, my other teachers at Sarah, they're incredible scholars, but they love to like go out at sunset and take a walk through the fields. And, so it's important to, even Geshe Legtsok, who's the former abbot of Gyume Monastery, former abbot of Sarah, he's one of the highest lamas from Sarah now. He's going around giving initiations around the world. When he was a teacher at Sarah, he would sneak off and go to the movie theater in Kushanagar, in the town, to watch like Bollywood movies, So it's like sometimes the guru devotion can lead to having this overly pure view of our teachers and then thinking we have to be like this when it's not reality. Now, the reality is, the good teachers, they know when to push and really be serious about practice, and when to step back and relax and just kind of enjoy life. Because we're human. Like we need enjoyment. We need contact with others. We need to relax. So yeah. That's something I think Westerners, we sort of lose sight of easily. Okay. So with that in mind, let's stop here and enjoy the rest of our day doing something different. No? So yeah, let's dedicate briefly, think whatever merit we've accumulated, may it become a cause for us and all sentient beings to develop all the realizations of the path to enlightenment. And from life to life, in this life and future lives, may we always meet with the spiritual teachers and a pure, unmistaken spiritual path and instructions. And yeah, from our side, have faith and interest in that enthusiasm. And then on the basis of that, be able to use our lives, this life and future lives, to continually work for the welfare of others, right? And work towards achieving liberation and full enlightenment. And then bring to mind any other prayers you'd like to make. So all the sick, may they be healed. And those are hungry and thirsty, especially those in Gaza suffering so much right now. May they be relieved from hunger and thirst, have plentiful food and drink, shelter, education, and so forth. All the necessities of life. Those who have recently died, may they quickly take a precious human rebirth, a rebirth in a pure land. And in short, all sentient beings who are suffering in countless other ways, may they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. For that purpose, may the Buddha Dharma flourish in the world, and especially this center, Chokro Simling. May it be free of every obstacle and have every supportive condition to flourish more and more. Yeah. And may the precious mind of bodhicitta that has not yet arisen, arise and grow with that which has been developed, may it increase more and more. Okay, thank you all. Enjoy your day. Tomorrow at 10:30 is the next session starts. Chokorsimling, not. I said, oh, sorry. I'm thinking of Bangalore. I'm thinking of the Bangalore Center. Sorry.